McCarthy get the starting job for the Minnesota Vikings? It's a really complicated question that could be answered in a myriad of ways. Should he start right away and just learn through it? What's his mental makeup like? Are we going to be able to trust that he's going to be able to evolve from all his failures? Because as a young quarterback, he's likely going to fail quite a bit. And that's okay because it's part of the development process. But not everybody can handle that right away once they get to the league. Should he sit a year? Should he sit longer than a year? What is the right amount of time for J.J. McCarthy to wait until he's the starting quarterback? It's a very complicated question that we're going to try to answer here on the Real Forno Show.
Welcome to the Real Forno Show, hosted by Tyler Forness, publisher at The Sporting News, contributor on SKOL North's Purple Daily, publisher of Substack Run In Shooter, the host of The Good, The Bad, and The Hungry on the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network, and a founding member of Vikings First and SKOL.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Real Forno Show. Sam Munson is not joining us here tonight. I'm your host, Tyler Forness. With me, as always, in the top right corner is producer Dave. And we believe we have all the audio issues fixed from the unfortunate incidents of yesterday's two old bloggers. When you have these kind of machines, they can do some wonky things, as you've seen on my show many, many times. So if you see or notice anything, please let us know, and we will continue to troubleshoot and yell at the people who sold these to us. Let's have some fun conversation here tonight. We're going to talk about J.J. McCarthy. We're going to talk about what's right for his development. And it's a very tough question because there really isn't a great answer to that. And I'll explain why in the process of having the conversation, because we really just don't know so many details, so many vital things about J.J. McCarthy and his development. We don't know, and we aren't in the building every day. We don't see him going through workouts. We're not going to see him going through every single practice. We're not going to see him in meeting rooms. So we're going to try to approach it like we did with talking about Kwesi Dupamensa's draft strategy last week. We're going to approach it with all the information we have and try to project forward, because that's all we can do. We're not going to pretend we know everything, because we don't. But we're going to try to answer the question to the best of our abilities with what we have. And that's going to be the big thing. But before we kind of get going into that, Dave, as a general scope for J.J. McCarthy, what is your intuition tell you on how they should approach it? When should he be the starter?
When he accomplishes all the blocks that KOC wants him to. Now, how quickly he learns that is up to him. I think they're going to give him the opportunity to learn it as fast as possible. KOC's offense is not for the meek of heart. It is a complicated offense. And rather than dumbing down the offense to a simple 5 plays type deal, I think they're going to try to install virtually all of it and have him demonstrate that he can operate it. Once he does that, I think he's in. Now, like I said, it's up to him. He has always been an overachiever. He has always had football number 1 on his list. He has a fiancée already, so he's not going to be out chasing women. That's already settled. He's looking for a place to live. Great. I'm sure he'll find a nice one. They'll get that all done. He'll put out of his mind, once all that stuff, the outer frill stuff is done, he's going to be deep into learning how to be the quarterback for the Minnesota Vikings. Now, as I said on a pre-show remark, we might want to put a pool up there to see when that is. Could that be week 1? Absolutely. He could he could try to master everything and get good enough to where he plays week 1. Could that be week 1 of next year? Yes, absolutely. Could it be around Thanksgiving time frame this year? Yep, absolutely. I don't know. But knowing from what I've read and learned and heard about this kid, I'm not going to hold him back from starting sometime this season.
Yeah, and I'm not going to either. And I want to start off with this point, which was made by Kevin O'Connell. I've read so many pieces on the Vikings draft process, so I don't fully remember who wrote it. I believe it was Albert Breer, and if I'm wrong, somebody please correct me because I want to attribute it to the right person. But the whole process of the Vikings ending up making the selection, Kevin O'Connell, once they did make the selection, has a series of benchmarks, a series of must-haves before J.J. McCarthy or whoever was picked gets to start at quarterback. And that's going to be doing things the right way, doing things with good process, leading the team, being a timely person, being good on the practice field, understanding what's going on. Because, look, there are 3 main parts to being a successful quarterback. Infrastructure, which is going to be your surrounding talent and coaching and play calling, okay? Your talent, and your intelligence. And intelligence means a lot of different things. It's going to mean confidence. It's going to mean how well do you know the playbook? How good are you at processing when you're out on the football field? There's so many different levels to it. And you have to be intelligent in order to play the quarterback position. If you are, quote unquote, for lack of a better term, dumb, you're not going to make it. You have to be intelligent. But there are so many layers to what intelligent means that it can't be produced in some kind of binary measure. All right. Peyton Manning is probably the smartest quarterback to ever play. He was so brilliant in understanding everything you were going to do that, and I've talked about this a lot, and I've probably mentioned it on the show a couple times. Ed Reed used to intentionally screw up coverages just so he could bait Peyton Manning in a future game. Like, that's the kind of intelligence we're talking about. Somebody who knows every little intricate detail. That's what you should aspire to be at quarterback. You should aspire for every single little detail where you know what's going on. You know what Justin Jefferson is going to do when he's releasing with this release on this route concept against this coverage. McCarthy should know exactly where to put the ball on every single throw that he makes to Justin Jefferson. He should know that with Jordan Addison. He should know that with TJ Hawkinson. He should know that with Josh Oliver, Jalen Naylor, Brandon Powell, everybody. Because that's what's expected of quarterback. And that's a very difficult thing to ask, especially a young man who's a fresh 21. We're not talking about a guy who's 30 years old who's been doing this for a decade in the NFL. We're talking about a guy who's never taken an NFL snap, never put on an NFL jersey or a helmet. He's going to do both of those this Friday, by the way, which is going to be a lot of fun to watch, even from afar, because training camp. I mean, it's training camp. So those things all matter. And the big thing here is Kevin O'Connell is going to be looking for those benchmarks. And I also think it's important that if you hear, oh, J.J. McCarthy threw 6 interceptions today. Good. I hope J.J. McCarthy throws a lot of interceptions in training camp. You know why? That's how you learn. That you take those opportunities and chances in training camp. Oh, I think I can make this throw. Make it in practice. If you can make it in practice, then you can make it in a game. Why? If you fail in practice, guess what? It's just going to annoy your coaches. It's not going to change the course of a game, which could theoretically have you lose the game, end your season, potentially get somebody hurt. In practice, it's not like that. You get to test those boundaries and understand what you can and can't get away with at this level, because McCarthy has a good arm. I put it like a 7.5 out of 10. Like, he did hit 61 miles an hour on the radar gun, which was great. And he's got some real zip. But there are not necessarily limitations, but there are things that are issues where it's not perfect. And I think a 7.5 is a pretty fair rating. He can make every throw, but we still need refinement. And understanding what you can get away with and what you can't, I think is going to be really, really pivotal to his success early and his success down the line. Now, one of the things that we can point to in his college career that shows, hey, I don't think he did enough of that in practice at Michigan. Look at the Bowling Green game in 2023. Multiple turnover-worthy plays. I believe he threw 3 interceptions. Why? It felt like he was doing that practice thing that I just talked about, where you're trying to figure out if you can make these throws and if you can get away with it against certain coverages, against with whatever talent's on the field. But he wasn't able to do it, and I think that helped him carry throughout the course of the rest of the season. But you got to do that in practice. You got to do that in the proper times. And I think if he works really hard and does all that during practice with the Vikings, I think that's objectively a good thing. And I think coaches are going to see that too, because throw 1 interception, okay. Throw 2, well, why'd you throw it again? Well, okay, I saw this, and I thought I could hit it. Okay, well, you can't, so don't. Okay. Then if you throw it a 3rd time, then you have some problems. So that's kind of how that process ends up working. Now, McCarthy is going to be given opportunities. He's going to also have to work his way up. It would not shock me if McCarthy starts the process as QB4. Now, that's not an indoctrination of anything. He is the only player on the roster who's never started a game at quarterback in the National Football League. That's not unfair. He could also start as QB3, and I don't think anybody would bat an eye if they put him over Jaron Hall. But a lot of times they make these guys work, and you got to earn it. But he could also earn it really, really quickly, where he could get that spot, I don't know, in 5 days and get up to QB3. So the big thing is just going to be nurturing. It's going to be talking with JJ McCarthy, getting him to a good point, getting him in a position to thrive, and figuring out however you need to do that. And Dave, there's kind of multiple schools of thought on how to get him there. There is throw him to the wolves and just let him figure it out. There's some pluses and minuses to that. Some people can thrive with that. Peyton Manning threw an NFL record 29 interceptions in his rookie year. Well, I think he won the MVP in 1999. It worked out pretty well for him. And he's a Hall of Famer. Some people call him the greatest quarterback of all time. Then you have his contemporary in the same class, Ryan Leaf. Nope. He played early, did not go well. So it's a complicated question, but what do you have a preferred method? And take JJ McCarthy completely out of this. Do you have a preferred method on should you play right away and just work through your lumps and just kind of deal with it, but instill that confidence, or sit for an extended period of time so you can learn?
Well, generally sitting works better in the long run. And there's some data to show that. However, a lot of times it goes by draft position. If you're drafted in the top 10, you're expected to start. Now, we have a good top 10 drafted quarterback on the roster already that seems to have overcome some of his initial poor circumstances in Sam Darnold. It's going to be interesting to see what he's learned under KOC so far and with the Niners last year. So you have a cushion. You can set JJ and let him learn. And you talked about routes on how to make sure he knows where to throw it to Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison and TJ, etc. Well, not only does he have to learn where to throw it, he's got to learn where to throw it, how it's planned, and then he's got to learn where to throw it by what the wide receivers' reads are, because their read may be cut out, cut in, go post, do whatever it is, because they have reads as well, and know how to see that and see their reads so that he can anticipate where they're going and throw it. And then also learn how each of those wide receivers likes the ball, because some wide receivers like it at their face, right? They want it right here. Other guys like it at their chest. Other guys like it outside a little bit. He's got all this learning to do. Well, the more time you have to learn that, generally, the better it goes. But it will be interesting to see. Well, this is interesting. Look at this. So whoever's took my picture and name, I appreciate that. It's going to be interesting to see how he develops. I think he's going to want it all, and he's going to want it quick. So, hey, like I said, the preferred method, let him sit and learn the action. Even during preseason games, he's going to get time and he's going to play, but it's not the same as a regular season game. I think there's value to him sitting there with the earpiece in and listening to the flow of a regular season game. Now, could they accelerate that by playing tapes from last year? If the Vikings kept tapes from last year as to those calls, maybe that would be a possible way around it, so that he can sense what's going on, how KOC's calling stuff in games, right? What he's looking for, maybe. But I suspect he's not going to start week one. I think they're going to sit him unless he accomplishes all of that. I was talking to Darren, or I was talking to somebody on the phone that we were talking about, I think it was you, when's JJ's contract going to be signed? And that I think Justin Jefferson wants to go out and catch balls from this kid. It's a new toy to Justin Jefferson. I think JJ would love to throw to JJ, tomorrow if he could. Now, there's rules, but I think as soon as those guys can get together, I think they're going to start throwing footballs. I think that would be advantageous for J.J. McCarthy. I think it'd be advantageous for Sam Darnold if Sam Darnold can get together with all the receivers. And they all get together and they start working on it. So, and that would help speed up the process. But if you ask me what is my preferred is to take the time and let him learn. But if he learns ahead of time, if he's an overachiever, let him start.
Yeah, this is a really, really interesting thing with McCarthy. And I'm trying to think of the right way to phrase this. One of the big things with McCarthy here is the fact that he's a quote unquote winner. It's a very, very weird construct to talk about, especially when you have people claiming that quarterback wins is not a stat. Well, it is a stat, and you can't debate that. You can debate whether it's good or not. And to me, I think that's the one thing that drives me bonkers more than anything. It's a stat. You just think the stat sucks. But
it's everybody else's fault. I've heard that before. Yeah.
Well, I mean, you can argue that the quarterback isn't solely responsible and therefore shouldn't be credited, but we have no problem with baseball pitchers, and pitchers are the single most pivotal player when it comes to a baseball team winning a baseball game. And you could say the same thing for quarterback. And I think it's a fair thing to talk about wins and losses from a quarterback perspective like that. Now, you also want to look at a big sample size. You don't want to look at a 3-game sample size. Oh, J.J. McCarthy's 0-3. He's a bust. No. You want to look at it from like, okay, he's got 100 starts. Where are we at? Well, J.J. McCarthy is 70-30. So he wins 7 out of every 10 games he starts. Okay, that's pretty good. We take that.
We'll take
that. And that, I think that is a good way to kind of look at wins and losses. Well, he also dominated the competition wherever he was at. 63-3 across his time starting in high school and college. At Michigan, 28-1. His only loss, TCU in the college football playoff 2022. The college football playoff was his only loss. And guess what? He lost by 3. 3 measly points. Get him his senior year, junior year, 15-0. His final year at Michigan. 15-0. Yeah. This guy knows how to win. He understands what it takes to win. He understands the preparation needed to win. He understands how to help elevate his team to win. Now we can have the argument, we've had this argument many times before. Has he done enough to show that he can carry a team consistently? No, I don't think he has. And I also don't think that it's that big of a deal, but it is a variable to add to the equation, whether you believe he's going to be successful in the NFL or not. Variables are difficult. You want to be able to answer every variable, but you can't always do that when you make these picks. You have to use some form of projection. And projection, well, when you take a swing like this, you got to be right. And I think the interesting thing with Kwesi Adofo-Mensah and Kevin O'Connell is if they get it wrong with J.J. McCarthy, they didn't mortgage the future to go and get him. So even if they're wrong with McCarthy and he ends up being a Justin Fields level quarterback, but they're still winning football games, they might get another shot at this. And I think that's an interesting element too. It's something we haven't really discussed yet, but it's something that needs to be considered. All right. So with McCarthy, do you sit him or do you play him long term? Do you play him right away? I think you could honestly look at all the information presented to you. And especially if you want to go read about who J.J. McCarthy is, Luke Braun did a really good retrospective piece on McCarthy, the person, for Reef Hassan's Substack Wide Left that dropped today. High recommend you go subscribe. I write an article here or there on there too, but it's like 3,500 words on J.J. McCarthy's history, J.J. McCarthy as a leader, J.J. McCarthy's process to play quarterback. High recommend. But one of the big things is he's so determined to win. He's so determined and headstrong in that way where he does not accept failure. And I think another player that really resembles that, I've been watching the New England Patriots documentary on the Tom Brady, Bill Belichick dynasty. Kind of gives some Tom Brady vibes in that way, where the stories that they tell about Brady having such a competitive streak in him, where he would throw Nintendo controllers against the wall if he was going to lose in Tecmo Bowl, where he would just freak out if things weren't going well, and he would just get angry, and it's so driven to be great, so driven to win. I don't think J.J. McCarthy comps Tom Brady. I'm not saying that, and I think saying that would just be absurd and putting way too much pressure on the kid. But you talk about that competitiveness, that competitive drive. Some very interesting parallels there. And I think if you were to start McCarthy day one, Dave, I don't think you would be looking at an adjunct disaster. I don't think you would be looking at you're setting this guy up to fail, especially with the infrastructure that the Vikings have, because the infrastructure is going to help J.J. McCarthy. The infrastructure on its own is going to help J.J. McCarthy at least achieve a baseline. And I think that's objectively good. I think that's something that you can justify. Okay, I think he has the mental fortitude to be able to deal with failure on the fly. So if he throws an interception at the end of the first half, that ends up swinging the game 14 points, I don't think it's going to crush him.
He's not going to turn him.
No, he's not going to go Derek Carr on the bit. And I think that's a good thing. But I also don't think you have to rush him to a point where he has to start right away. And this is where we're not really going to get an answer to this question. And I think that can be a really frustrating thing because we just need to learn more. We need to get him on the field. We need to see what Kevin O'Connell has to say about him. We need to see how he handles training camp, how he handles mini camp, how he interacts with the team, how he's learning the playbook, how he performs in preseason games. We need all this information to truly know, should he start right away? Should he sit? on the outset, I think you have to make the decision. And we'll kind of conclude this topic here. You have to make the decision based on these things. Is he ready to play from a physical standpoint? When he is on the field and is playing, is he good enough? If the answer is yes, then you play him. If the answer is most of the time, then you play him. If the answer is not really, then you don't. How does he handle failures? The second question. When he throws a pick, does he pout? Does he get overly emotional? Or does he try to constructively fix what happened and what went wrong? If you answer yes to the first part, no, you let him sit. If you answer yes to the second part, you go forward and you start him. Lastly, does J.J. McCarthy give you a better chance to win than Sam Darnold, Nick Mullins, or Jaron Hall? The answer is yes. You probably play him. The answer is no, you absolutely don't. You can argue that even if you believe he gives you the better chance to win, sitting him for a little bit and letting him see how Sam Darnold enacts the process, because I don't think we're talking enough about Sam Darnold here. The one interesting thing about Darnold is, yes, he's 26 years old. Yes, he is young. Yes, he was a third overall pick, and he's a stopgap quarterback. Here's the thing we're not talking about, Dave. He was J.J. McCarthy. He was drafted high, expected to be the savior of a franchise that really hasn't had a franchise quarterback in decades. Yeah, they had Chad Pennington for a hot minute. The Vikings had Culpepper. Yeah, they had Ken O'Brien in the 80s. That lasted for a little bit. Vikings had Tommy Kramer. The last true franchise quarterback that the Jets had, you could argue, is Joe Namath. For the Vikings, it's Fran Tarkenton. So you're even getting parallels from that perspective. And when you have those conversations, Darnold is going to be so influential. You know what? I think I'm going to write about this tonight because I'm talking myself into a piece here. Darnold can use his failure to help McCarthy. And that's not to say that Darnold's the exact same quarterback or anything like that. It's important to have a conversation where, hey, I saw this. I dealt with this. Hey, you remember when people made fun of me because I said I saw ghosts? Yeah, I did. Here's what happened, why I got to that point, and how I fixed it. Sam Darnold is arguably the perfect mentor for J.J. McCarthy. And I don't think that's being discussed enough here.
Okay.
But yeah, to kind of wrap it all up here, I don't know if you should start, but I think there is really interesting points from both sides of the fence, the yeses and the nos. And the whole point of this is to not necessarily give you a full answer to that question, but to get you thinking and be on the lookout for when those answers come so you can make that decision on how you feel about it for yourself. And we'll talk about it throughout the entire offseason.
Right. And we see him interact with the press. We gather that information. We're going to see him later this week in rookie minicamp. We'll gather that information, and then we go through all the OTAs. We'll be watching, and all those pieces will fall in. We'll be talking about them, and everybody that's watching right now or listening tomorrow will be gathering that information as well from us and other Viking sources. So it's going to be interesting. Now, the one thing you didn't mention, the intangibles. You talked briefly about the intangibles. The it factor is what I call it. The leadership. There was somebody in the remarks said he always, his teammates will go through a brick wall for him. Stuff like that. That will move him up quicker as well, because those players are going to want to perform and make sure everything goes well for him as well. And they're going to be helping. Like I said, when I talked earlier about, I think JJ wants to get with him to catch footballs, and Jordan Addison and TJ, et cetera. TJ obviously can't because he's rehabbing, but everybody wants to get with him, and they're going to help in that development. It's it takes a village to raise a child and Vikings to raise a village. Well, it takes other Vikings players to help raise AISE J.J. McCarthy. And they're going to do that, and they're going to probably do that with Sam Darnold as well. So we'll find out.
I'm really excited to find out. And I think, to me, that's the biggest thing here is we don't know everything here. And McCarthy's going to give us those answers over the course of the next few months. And I think that's really, really fun. A couple other things here. This may be a little bit of a shorter show, but you know what? That's okay. Because we don't want to keep you here any longer than we need to, especially the Timberwolves play a basketball game tonight.
Will they go 2-0 over the Nuggets?
Survey says yes, they will. So let's talk about a couple things. I wrote, Dave, I don't know if you saw this. I wrote a mock schedule. I pulled a Judd Zulgad.
I did look at it briefly. You have us playing the Colts in London.
Yes, I do. I have been told that the rumor is apparently that the Vikings will be playing. Who is it?
Texans.
The Cardinals.
Cardinals.
The rumor is the Cardinals on October the 6th. So
Ooh,
we'll find out if that's the case. We will. But I'll kind of go through it. Look, here's the thing. It's all in fun. It's a guessing game. And I would not be shocked if I had, I'd say 3 or 4 of these right. I have a 33% chance to get the last game right, at least for opponent. I've got like a 16.7% chance to get the opponent and location right. But yeah, so I think the big thing is when we talk about the schedule reveal, which if I am not working, we will try to do something live or a reaction pretty quickly thereafter, because I do have a job bartending now. So what I tried to do was I tried to look at it. Okay, the Vikings ended up last season with 5 primetime games. They were coming off of the 13-4 regular season. They were also critiqued very harshly for their performance because it wasn't up to par. What was the word that everybody kept using?
Fraudulent.
Yeah, fraudulent. So I took a look at that, and I looked at it. I'm like, okay, so they had 5. I have them with 4. And I also talked about who are the most likely opponents when it comes to the primetime games. Most likely opponent is the Atlanta Falcons. Unless Fox somehow protects that, I don't see a world, Dave, where they end up playing on Fox. Because, I mean, Fox can protect a certain amount of games, but to me, that screams primetime. Kirk Cousins going back to US Bank Stadium, this, that, or the other thing. So I do have a week 10 against the Atlanta Falcons on Sunday Night Football. And here's why I ended up picking a game later in the season, Dave. Because the big thing here is I think the NFL is going to want it to be J.J. McCarthy versus Kirk Cousins. And the way to try and get more of a guarantee that you're going to have it be J.J. McCarthy versus Kirk Cousins is to play that game a lot later in the season. Because we don't know what the path is for McCarthy. I think the assumption is going to be that, okay, moving forward, it should be J.J. McCarthy. But when will that change happen? I don't know. I really don't know. And when you kind of take a look at that and other encompassing factors, the NFL is going to try and want to get as close of a guarantee as you can. So on average, top 10 quarterback probably is going to sit between 3 and 8 games. Probably not very long, but there are so many different factors to determine when a guy does and doesn't play. So that's why I thought week 10 was probably about the right time, because you don't want to do it too late where if it's too late, then what happens if both teams stink? Then the intrigue of that game is going to be, okay, there is none. But there's still going to be intrigue from the fact that it's Kirk Cousins returning. But you want it to mean something. So week 10, unless the Vikings start 2-7, because I do have them with a bye in week 7, they're not going to start 2-7. They'll probably be between 3-4, or sorry, between 4-5 and 7-2. Somewhere in there is probably what they'll end up being. I'd guess 4-5 or 5-4, which is fine. Freddie, we'll talk about wide receiver 3 in a little bit because we're going to have some other topics here, okay? So the Falcons are probably going to end up being favorites for the NFC South. So you look at those factors, bada bing, bada boom. And I'm a big fan of that. I also had them to, what was it? Facing the New York Jets in week 1 on Sunday Night Football.
Which makes
Aaron
perfect
Rodgers
sense.
Returning to U.S. Bank Stadium. Yeah. The other
and
primetime
Sam Darnold
games,
or JJ. Sam Darnold storyline's perfect for that. Even if it's JJ, that's a good storyline. That one's easily promotable.
Oh, yeah. I did have them week 3, Houston Texans, Monday Night Football, Danielle Hunter coming back. And then the other primetime game I had was Thursday night against the New York Giants, week 13. I also, because of that, predicted the Detroit Lions, Thanksgiving, 11:30 a.m.
Could be.
Yeah. And you know what? It very well could be. And I hope it will be, because that would be a heck of a way to spend Thanksgiving watching the Minnesota Vikings. Well, I may be annoyed by it because I'll have to work, but I mean, I worked New Year's, Christmas, Thanksgiving, whatever.
Right.
I get it right about football.
Aaron talks about Kirk versus Dallas, which is going to be a heck of a game. Have that the one right after.
Yeah.
Now,
That sounds about right.
if old timers like me have seen film on how the NFL used to set up the schedule, they'd have little chits on a big board and they'd start moving around and they'd get information on when the stadiums have other things going on and what's going on and all this other stuff. They now do it via computer, and it absolutely fascinates me because they run like 10,000 or 10 million permutations. I can't speak. Of the schedule. Well, it's interesting. Yeah, you could say, all right, we'll put in all the stuff where the stadiums have something else going on, right? They have their home and boat show or whatever's going on that weekend. So, or the baseball team is playing. So they've got to deconflict that. So they all have all those deconflictions. And then somebody's got to type in the algorithm the grudge matches, right? Do we want to see Sam Darnold against the Jets in week 1? If we do, we want that early because we expect JJ to be starting after that. Or do we want, Kirk Cousins versus the Vikings? Yes, we want that. Where do we want to put it? And all that stuff gets programmed into the algorithm, and they run the, 10,000 variations of it, and that'll come out Thursday, we all believe, and that is going to be interesting to see. But I would love to see what all goes into that, because that just fascinates me from my software background on how that gets built and what factors get put into it, because there are factors put into it. And grudge matches are definitely one of them. Interdivision games are big ones. The whole where everybody placed is big ones, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah. And yeah, it was a fun exercise. It's just for entertainment. And I'm intrigued to find out what the schedule is. It was projected to come out this week. Now I saw somebody say it's coming out next week. who knows at this point? You're going to find out about 24 hours before it actually does come out, because they have to keep it fluid just in case things happen and come up. So keep your eye out for that. Lastly, before we get to the last topic, we were asked about wide receiver 3. I think this could be Brandon Powell, because I don't trust Jalen Naylor. I don't trust him to stay healthy. He flashed a tiny bit at the end of 2022, but I haven't seen nearly enough to where I think he's going to be a wide receiver 3. I did with Powell. I was very surprised Powell looked like a wide receiver. I always thought he was a gadget guy and a returner, because I watched his career at Florida. He was like a discount kind of Percy Harvin, Kadarius Toney kind of player. That's the role he played. But when you look at what they ended up having him do this past year, he played a real receiver role, and he caught the game-winning touchdown against the Atlanta Falcons. He did this, that, and the other thing. There's a lot to like with him. There's also the size is a little bit concerning, which is completely fair, but Naylor hasn't shown enough. But he does have Keenan McCardell. McCardell loves him. So when you look at all these encompassing factors, I think it matters. I think there's a good chance that it's Powell. It could be Naylor. Trent Sherfield's a wild card, but we don't really know wide receiver 3. I think they're going to sign somebody. I really do. I think they're going to bring in some competition at the position, but we'll find out. Last topic, Dave. Dalton Risner. Why is he not a Minnesota Viking?
You wrote about this.
I did. I don't think he's a Minnesota Viking because I don't think he's good enough for the contract he's asking for. Now, remember earlier this offseason, he tweeted that he doesn't want anything exorbitant. He wants a starting level guard contract, which the market has been set on a starting level guard contract to be around $9 million a year. He's not worth $9 million a year. Seems like a good dude. Played okay. But the way that this team wants to play offense, they need a guard who can climb to the second level. They need a guard who, when moving in space, takes the right angles and aims properly when trying to go block second level defenders. Risner just doesn't do that well. And the one thing with Blake Brandel, he moves in a straight line very well. He can climb to the second level. He has a really quick get off, and his explosive drills are excellent. Now he struggles with his feet in short spaces, and that's one of the reasons why he struggles as a tackle, because he just can't deal with speed rushers. But you don't have that when you move him inside to guard, which is, I think, is the reason why the Vikings did that, because they saw him with a bigger future on the inside than they did on the outside, which I think is fair. I think it is an interesting idea, and I don't necessarily disagree on it. So when I look at everything, all encompassing, like, I just don't think Risner is good enough, and nor does he fit well enough with what the Minnesota Vikings want to do in the running game. And I think that's really important, because the Vikings are trying to prioritize the running game. And if you're going to prioritize the running game, you can't re-sign Risner when he was so poor in the running game this past year. And Ezra Cleveland, if you look at like the PFF grades, look, his PFF grades got knocked down a lot when he went to Jacksonville, because the big thing with offensive line, it's a big time chemistry position. You all right there, Cheddar? He's like making weird noises. I think he's dreaming. You feed off of the guy next to you, and you know what they're going to do, and then you can help them when they need it. They can help you. But if you don't have that kind of chemistry, like when he walked into Jacksonville and started playing right away, there were things missing, and there were rushers getting through. And some of that was just on Cleveland, where he was playing poorly. Some of it was just because he's the new guy, and being the new guy is very hard when it comes to offensive line. But Cleveland was better than Risner when Cleveland was a Minnesota Viking. And he could climb to the second level. He could make all the difficult blocks you needed him to. And he was a capable, consistent player. And that's just something that Dalton Risner's not. And I think it's a good thing that they haven't brought him back. I don't think they should bring him back, especially at starting level guard money. It also could be an approach with Fomensa that they just don't value guard that much. And they're okay starting a guy like Blake Brandel and paying him $3.5 million a year. Is that a good strategy? Yeah, we'll find out. Especially with guards now making like $20 million on the open market. But it's a strategy that they want to take. And I think that there's some merit to it. And we're going to find out if they're right. And that's the thing. If they're wrong, they're going to pivot. And they're going to pivot quickly. And they're going to try and bring in a guy like a Dalton Reisner to at least stabilize the position, even if it's not great. And that's the thing with some of these bets that Quasito Fomensa has made. If he's wrong, he's not afraid to admit it and cut bait. Did so with Ross Blacklock, did so with Jalen Reagor, and that's fine. It's good to take chances with calculated risks. But if you're wrong, it's also okay to just be like, nope, it didn't work. We're going to move on. Don't buy into the sunk cost fallacy.
You're talking about Quasi and his doing the money. We may find out it changes next free agent period next year when he buys a top of the line guard and pays him $20 million. Mm-hmm. He just may not have found that person yet, so he's waiting.
It also could be that he thinks he's right in this philosophy and he could just be proven wrong, and then it's an overcorrection. Now, I kind of criticize the Chiefs when they overcorrected their offensive line by spending an exorbitant amount on Orlando Brown and spending an exorbitant amount on Joe Thuney and then Jawan Taylor. Well, they got 2 Super Bowls out of that. Or was it 3? No, it was 2 because they won their first one before they lost to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Right? And that's the thing. He could correct himself. We'll find out. We will find out. SKOL, it's not that Ryan Grigson didn't do well with O-line in Indianapolis. He ignored it. I think those are 2 different things. If he wouldn't have ignored it, maybe Andrew Luck's still playing football. And you know what? I will say this. It's okay to evolve your process, and I think Grigson has learned a lot from his mistakes in Indianapolis. And I actually don't think he's necessarily been a bad addition to the Minnesota Vikings front office. I can't say for sure he's been a good one. I don't think he's been bad. That's our show here tonight, guys. We will be back Wednesday night with another episode of the Real Forno Show. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast feed as well, where you'll get Who Will Be King later this week. And you also get all of the shows that Dave and I do. And also like, comment, subscribe, and ring the bell anytime something big happens. If we're able to, Justin Jefferson signs that extension, which is coming. It's coming. You better believe that we're going to be ready to go. You better believe that we are going to have the ability to bring you everything right away. We just passed 3,800 subscribers. We have been a channel for less than 14 months. Pretty damn cool. Pretty damn cool.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Yes, thank you. In the meantime, I am Tyler. He is Dave. Like, comment, subscribe, ring the bell. And don't forget, if you have a business, we're looking for sponsors. Thank you very much for joining. SKOL Vikings, everybody.
SKOL Vikings. Like, subscribe, and ring the bell to get notifications. It helps us grow this community that we all love, our Minnesota Vikings. And on behalf of Tyler Forness and myself, Dave Stefano, thank you so dearly for watching The Real Forno Show. SKOL, everyone.